Viscum key. Oh,
Selene.
English, please. For your best experience to support the developer, consider getting DLCs. Maybe. Let's try it out first. Wait, more games, artbook, settings, load. Let's just start. Is this a clicker game? Do I need to run? The sound is driving him crazy. Oh. Monotonous muffled thuds were resonating throughout his head with dual pain. The pain wasn't too strong, nothing unbearable. But that sound, more than anything else, he wanted to stop. The sound to just stop. I can't. Thud. Nevertheless, the knocking sounds didn't end. He knew it well enough because he himself was the origin. Thud. 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 There we go. That sounds better. The nose of his slipper was hit in the rear of his desk over and over again like a huge fluffy moth frantically ramming against the window glass. He wanted plenty of things. He wanted to pay the rent in time this month. Not to displease his landlady again. I don't know what that's like. He wanted to finish the script, at least in draft, because the draft is way better than nothing, something one can work with. And he wanted to sleep. No, not quite that. The problem, a serious one, was that he didn't really want to sleep. Leaning back in his chair, he rubbed his eyes shut, pressing his eyeballs until dancing pale lights appeared. Of course, he took the sleeping pills. When a healthy 8-hour sleep gives way to a not so healthy 5-hour nap, then a 3-hour eye shut break, then goes away entirely, you stop thinking how this would impact your liver. You just want to sleep. My liver. You need to sleep, especially if you have already taken an advance payment for the first part of a gig and the goddamn text won't just write itself. However, if the text could in fact write itself somehow, he would probably lose his job. Didn't have any illusions in this regard. As soon as neural networks get smart enough, and dozens of other ghostwriters will vanish into morning mist of a new era in literature. Didn't have much of a name or connections, only some skill and a knack to meet the deadlines for the most part. The client was content with this, and he was content with the pay, so everything went well until the pills started failing him. Blam! This time the tick got too strong. His foot jerked and hit the board with every noticeable pain. Seemed like he even heard his toes crack. He muttered a short curse and rolled the chair away from the desk, although he knew now that his attention was not fixed on the blank text file, the tick should go away all by itself. It's funny how the consciousness is detached from the body. He often thought about it, especially while having insomnia. It's like you're working as a team, but your partner starts pulling something. You seem to have common goals, but when all hell breaks loose, you are suddenly left alone with it when your partner is more interested in watching the fire than fighting it. In the end, you have no idea what's on his mind. Well, at least there won't be any more knocking. Good. A small window at the far right side flashed white for a moment. A storm? Now that he thought about it, the day was hot. The vicious, stagnant air still filled the room. This and the barely audible squeak of an overheated network filter. He became sensitive to such things when he couldn't sleep for a long time, made the entire room seem to vibrate a little, like a cocoon that's about to hatch. Actually, that did sound like a good line. He rolled back to the table and was about to write that thought down, but paused over the keyboard, remembering the individual words and the general idea, but the sentence had already slipped away. This time the white light seemed to fill the entire room. He saw that. Then a thunder followed, resembling a low gut roar of something large and famished. Good Lord. He called to God way too often for someone who never knows to go to church. just a habit he inherited from his mother. The furious patter of raindrops pounded on his window. There's no way he could work like this. Not now. But maybe it's for the best. Since he was a little boy, he slept well during the storms. I do too. I just love rain and thunder. Something about it so soothing. I don't know why. Where was I? Had to seize the moment. He groped for a packer of sleeping pills. It's nice to have your working tools at hand. Popped the pills into his mouth and opened the window to hear the steady patter of the rain. Then he went to bed and collapsed on top of the bed sheets, his clothes still on. He could tell by the sound of the water how it flooded the windowsill and was trickling down to the floor. He said that was a small price to pay. He just lets it happen. Listen, I love rain. I don't want it in my house, though. He felt a pleasant chill of cloth beneath his cheek. The wavering haze was gradually fading from the room, yet the sleep did not come. He tried to take off his shoes, change positions, take a pillow, cover himself, throw the pillow away to the other side of the room. Nothing helped. He just lay there with his eyes closed, and though his closed eyelids felt heavy, he knew it was an illusion, all in vain. He's not sleeping. He can't sleep. Whoa. Thud. At first, he was imagining things. Thud, thud, thud. Sometimes the knocking paused, but it never stopped completely. The sound came from below, from the first floor. Someone was banging insistently on the door. With each thud, he could feel the rage building up like a tight knot of pain around his stomach. He is trying to sleep. I get that. Is it really that hard to just leave a man alone? At least at night? At least in the house that he pays for, specifically so that nobody would bother him? How far away do you live from people? Like deep in the woods? You're the only house miles deep, or what? He opened his eyes, easy, just as he thought. Sprang to his feet, ran down to the stairs. Something was boiling inside him. Halfway to the door, he took a turn to the cupboard and pulled out an old baseball bat. Let's get serious. He wasn't likely to actually use it. He asked himself if he would as he reached for the door handle. No, he certainly wouldn't, but he's angry, and he wants a night guest to learn it. What the hell? The rain was still pouring, or rather it was actually getting stronger, as his mother would say, and the floodgates of heaven tore open. His mother used to say a lot of things. That was one on the list of reasons why he had to rent this overpriced house where anyone could start banging the door in the middle of the night. A cat, for example. What the hell? He said it again, this time aloud. The cat was standing on his porch. Looked like a purebred British Shorthair in all respects, except for the color. Aside from the smoky gray head, it seemed as if she was dropped into a vat of white paint, or her lower part was dipped into a black one. Wet fur clung to her small, rather skinny body, dripping with water. Are we seeing the same thing? The cat could have probably slipped into the house as soon as the door opened, but instead she froze, as if waiting for the host to say something. He sees a full-on cat. I do not. Okay, it was cold outside, much colder than one might think. Raining cats and dogs. He didn't feel angry anymore. All right, come in. He stepped aside, freeing the doorway. The cat didn't move. So you don't want to, huh? He was about to say, fine then. Close the door, go back to the second floor, and lie in the suffocating half-sleep until morning. We finally realized what was wrong. The bat. He threw it away, aiming for the sofa, but missed. The bat clattered on the floorboards. The cat followed into the darkness with her round yellow eyes. The sounds didn't frighten her. He sighed. I won't hurt you. Come in if you want to. The cat raised her eyes at him. For the first time he actually saw and couldn't help admiring how big and yellow they were. The cat's pupil was also large and incredibly round, like 2 full moons in an eclipse. Just as he was about to close the door for the second time, the cat murmured something and fluttered into the house, butting him with her wet head as she passed by. He smiled. Strictly speaking, at this very moment, his line had ended. The landlady found out, and he was sure she would. He'd have to look for a new place to live. There are plenty of lonely, bored seniors in the neighborhood, he thought, and they only have two hobbies: observing and reporting. Subject and the recipient aren't that important. Well, it's fine. Maybe he'd leave the suburbs. Maybe he'd move to an apartment since him getting privacy didn't work out anyway. Didn't. Didn't. The rain was getting stronger still. Closed the door. The cat explored the house with cautious curiosity, stopping by different objects as if trying to understand their purpose. Watching what was amusing, so amusing, he even forgot about the stain. What stain? When he remembered, it was already spread out, a dark spot of water in the place where the cat clung to him. Pulled the wet cloth away from his body and stared at it blankly for a moment, then almost groaned aloud. The cat was soaked, so she probably got a lot of dirt in the house. He decided not to turn on the light. He had enough disappointment for the night. Instead, he went to get the towel. All right, come here. The cat turned her head to the voice and froze in place. She examined the TV, a lifeless black mirror of a plasma panel and a lacquer frame that he hadn't even touched since moving in. The reflection of the cat herself looked black. She gave him a long and praising look, and then, with a sudden eagerness, trotted towards him, deftly avoiding the obstacles. He was surprised. Maybe the cat decided he was more interesting than the TV. Or maybe she acted out of respect for her host's will. Anyway, he felt grateful. Finally, someone he can actually negotiate with. Suddenly, he thought how nice it would be to crawl under the blanket with a warm ball of fur. I didn't realize this was going to be all reading and clicking. I thought this was going to be a horror game. I'm sure there'll be. It would surely have helped him to fall asleep. As a child, he had a cat, gray, huge, brash, immensely ugly, and equally beloved. Immensely ugly. He often fell asleep hugging him. The cat's name was Timo, and he faded into a June night many years ago. The cat bumped her wet head against him once more. He thought that cats usually shake off the water themselves. Usually, but perhaps not always. Hey, easy there, you're all wet. The cat looked up at him with her moon-shaped eyes and murmured something again. Do something about it then. Wait. He smiled and got to work. He had to squeeze the fur thoroughly so the towel soon turned into a wet rag. Should he? Bathe the cat. Doesn't matter. They clean themselves. No. Never mind. This can wait. The cat's fur wasn't very long, but it was fluffy enough to hide her sunken sides. He was once again surprised at how skinny she was. He was even more surprised when he noticed a collar with a small locket. So you do have a home. In this case, you also have some shitty owners. The cat curled up on a wet towel in his lap, slowly dozing off. He could feel that familiar lulling vibe emerging inside her. Suddenly, he put the towel with the cat on it away. I should get you some food. Let me see what I have. He got up with just a tad bit difficulty, nothing he couldn't handle. Still, his body felt unusually heavy and unwieldy. He had to give the cat something to eat. He will lie down afterwards, and then, hell, maybe he'll even fall asleep. Maybe should have gotten a cat from much earlier. A ball of fur with a pair of moon eyes, a velvety voice that you can always negotiate with. Cats don't have. Jace. Jace. Meow. My cat's meow sounds like this. Is that velvety? He goes. He's nice. He just sounds like a chain smoker. He's staring at me now. Okay. And that's about it. That's kind of funny. Could have avoided all that suffering if he had a cat. The kitchen blurred before his eyes. He got to the refrigerator, opened it, squinting from the light and leaning on the door way harder than he was supposed to. The landlady was around at the time. She would have told him exactly so. Don't lean on the door. That's how landlady sound. After all, this is her house and her refrigerator, and everything should be neat and tidy in case she has to move new tenants in. Perhaps the landlady would have even warned him about the milk. Milk itself is completely harmless unless, of course, you are allergic to lactose. But there's a special kind of lactose for your milk, right? What matters is the bottle. Bottles, much like cats, can vary greatly, but this particular one was made of glass. If only the landlady was here, she would probably have told him not to touch the bottle because he's falling on the floor and the bottle might break, and then the milk will spill, and he will have nothing to feed the nice cat he found. Or rather, it was her who found him. Very timely because he was lying on the floor. He had been lying there for some time. It would have been lying still if he hadn't felt the light touch of something hot and rough on his cheek. It's almost like a dream, although, of course, comparing sleep with fainting isn't quite correct, no matter how you look at it. The floor beneath him was surprisingly hard, cold, and wet. He felt all of those three qualities clearly and was afraid to imagine what would happen if he tried to move. But he had to move, one way or another. At least to see what's up, because something hot and rough was still sliding up his cheek, gradually creeping up to his ear. He felt warm breath and then a cautious bite. Ouch! He jumped on the spot. Shadow rushed to the side, and then he calmly began to lap milk from a puddle. What kind of cat is this? Hello? It's not no cat I've ever seen. The cat. What are you doing? The cat looked at him briefly and licked her lips. No need to be this dramatic. You're lying around idly and you're not even a cat, see? Besides, you're soaked in milk. Well, you're right. I let you down. I had to get my punishment. I let myself down too. Punishment. Good Lord, now there's cleaning to do until the next advent, like his mother would have said. I'll go get a rag. Stay here and don't ruin what's left of the kitchen while I'm gone. Cat watched him go with a skeptical look. Are you the one who's been causing all the trouble so far? When he returned with the bucket, the cat was gone. It's daytime. The theater of what is that happening? Presents how to bake cookies. Are we baking cookies? In the kitchen, something exciting is happening. You will need a blade. Did you take the pills? Scratch out the entrail. Egyptians of the Wire used honey for embalming and preserving food. Later, their recipes were adopted by the Greeks. It's a loud-ass kid. Also add a teaspoon of apricot jam, a walnut, and a little cinnamon. Before baking, put a teaspoon of butter on top of. Alright. Pause. Welcome back! Why does that sound like that? Whatever. What was I doing? Before baking, put a teaspoon of butter on top of. Microwave for 5 minutes. 5 to 7 minutes at full power. Don't listen to them scream. Oh my god. That was a face. Did you see that? Bon appetit. What's that? The next time he saw her was in a few days, or maybe in a week. He always had a bad sense of time, especially when he was immersed in his work. He still couldn't sleep, but at least he was making some progress with the script. It was a narrative game project, as the customer called it, but actually meant do whatever you have to finish on time, else forget about the payment. And so we did, although he was resentful, and that got in the way a lot. The reason of those feelings was the cat. He knew how stupid that was, but he couldn't help it. What the cat do? If he gave her for the bite almost immediately, that wasn't the thing. He was bitter about how the cat ran away, despite him trying his best to take care of her. She was nowhere to be found in the house, so he immediately thought about an open window on the second floor. Maybe he should have closed it. He dwelled on the thought for a while. He even approached the window at some point, but in the end, he decided not to do anything about it. He was hoping, and there was no shame in it, in that it's not the same as you turn up 10 and start eyeing girls. The cat would come back. And she did. Yeah, just settled himself on a sofa with some book. Some was the word, as he couldn't remember a thing from the cover, even though he read the title several times. Symbols were floating before his eyes, and of course he couldn't make out a word. No wonder, considering he didn't sleep at all. When you think about it, it was surprising he could write in this state. Either way, they were following the book, so he wasn't upset at all when a fluffy head butted his hand. Hey, I'm trying to read here. And you don't seem to be getting anywhere. What does it matter anyways? Better scratch me right here. He complied. You were absent for so long. I thought you won't be back. Why didn't you close the window upstairs? There's a big difference between expectations and hopes. Yeah, I learned that well. Why did you leave? Did I do anything wrong? Cat stayed silent. Whatever. We're happy you're back. Alright, doesn't matter that much. I'm happy to have you back. After all, there was no point in his grudge from the start. Nobody gains anything by holding on to small grudges, staying blind to what they really feel. You wouldn't have won anything. It's not a damn lottery. You hear that? Damn lottery. The cat rubbed against his arm again, put the book down and gently placed her on his lap. The locket around her neck, unexpectedly cold, touched his skin. Then he got a hunch. Did you go home? I have no home. Well, someone must be caring about you if they put a collar on you. Sometimes a collar is just a collar. Don't you know? This time it was him who stayed silent. The cat buried her head in his stomach. Want me to take it off? No. It is mine now. Besides, it's easier this way if I catch someone's eye on the streets. He nodded, because if you think about it, that really was a reasonable choice. The cat's fur was thick and smooth, very pleasant to the touch. He wanted to bury his face in it and find out what it smelled like. What she smells like. Do you have a name? Of course. Everything has a name. And what's yours? The cat looked at him carefully with the bright yellow eyes as if saying, take a guess. But she didn't actually say anything. On her locket, there was a small engraved crescent moon that was dimly shining in the pale light coming out of the window. Selene. The cat looked up at him, and her pupils flickered into two full moons in an eclipse. Then she rubbed against his arm one last time and stood up, stretching, arching her back. Don't close the window on the second floor. I won't. I might be wrong, but I'm starting to think the cat shows up when he's dealing with insomnia and taking whatever pills he's taking. So the cat, and imagine it, because he sees a cat. I'm seeing a cat person. I'm sure everybody else watching is seeing a cat person, but he's seen a full-on cat. I think I'm too tired for this. She left, but the name stayed with him in and around the house. Then he started writing on the walls, Selene. Selene. So hummed the glass, white in the moonlight. So whispered the long shadows of the branches outside the window. Focus on the name. What is Selene? For some reason, the question bothered him. Vaguely remembered it had something to do with mythology. Such things never really caught his interest, but fortunately, he knew someone he could turn to. Selene. Oh. Meanie. You know I can't stand them. Who's Ethan? And you know it's me who'll have to take care of it after all. You're basically living in the office. Ethan never liked the cats. And the dogs, too. Not much of a difference. He didn't like the very idea of keeping a predator at home, even a small one. He couldn't quite explain why. Hope sighed. She closed the tab with the Cattery's website, then slapped her husband lightly on the shoulder. Oh, okay. Even so, the faces of the Persian cats, deeply depressed and equally concave, still lingered before his mind's eye. Ethan held up his hands in a, actually, I don't know that word, conciliatory gesture. Don't judge me. He knew it wasn't over yet. Hope is not the one to give in this easy. She never was, and for him, there was something incredibly appealing about it. Alright, sorry. Being a dad is a 24/7 hour job. I am tired. Okay, come to think of it, quite possibly it'll be him who capitulates. Yes, in the end. In a relationship, you always have to sacrifice something. In 4.5 years, or even 5 according to Hope, he had learned this quite well. Suddenly Hope frowned, looking at the screen. Seems like you got an email from, damn, a tough one. I can't quite read it. It just hit your work mailbox. Let me see. Oh, Hope, I got a new project. Middle Ages are fine and all, but they are about to start pouring out of my ears. He reached for his laptop, but Hope grabbed it and dodged him. Right? Why don't we talk contracts on a Sunday evening? So which one of us is all work and no play, Well, such are the benefits of freelance. Come on, give it back. Hope giggled and leaned over the armrest hanging over the floor. Hope's defenses withstood several more attacks. Each time Ethan thought the laptop would definitely hit the floor. Then she gave Ethan a peck on the cheek and slid off the couch. The laptop returned to its owner. Alright, I give up. I mean, what if they'll actually give you a new contract, but on the same old Middle Ages? Now that would be a twist. Yeah, a hilarious one. So am I Ethan in this? But there was nothing about the Middle Ages in the letter. Not to mention the payment too. Ethan read it several times. Moving the formality aside, there was but one question in the letter. Ethan, or rather, part of him that was responsible for finding the accurate answers, got immediately engaged by the wording. What is Selene? Oh. Ethan rolled that question around his mouth as if tasting it. At a glance, the answer was simple. Ethan's real passion was the early Renaissance, but he was a history consultant after all. At least he liked to think of himself that way. The HC was paying him for a reason. He needed no research to tell that Selene was the goddess of the moon in the ancient Greece. I don't know that. I know a little bit about mythology. I don't know that. See, now I gotta look that up. The question, however, seemed to be way more intricate in its nature. Or at least, that's what Ethan wanted to think, because Middle Ages were actually about to start pouring out of his ears. He was always diving into his work completely, and living an age where madness, curse, and death are contagious is an exhausting trial. He needed some distraction. Of course, he had a part-time job with those online courses, but the platform where he lectured wasn't planning anything new just yet. All in all, the request looked interesting, if not for one small matter, the payment, or rather the lack thereof. Ethan hesitated. Sender's name seemed familiar. He searched the email address and found out they already worked together on a couple of texts. Both times his efforts were duly paid for by the agency. Ethan never worked for free. It wasn't his principle, but rather a matter of necessity. The problem here was the fact that Ethan loved what he was doing too much. If you are trying to make money from what you love, that's a slippery slope. I don't want to hear that. That's sad. I like playing games. Subscribe. Okay. A free service there. An unpaid consultation here. And then you go back to splitting the sheet protectors 8 hours a day, watching your dreams rust away. Besides, Ethan didn't want to let Hope down. Of course, she supported him when he decided to go freelance, but Ethan never wanted to take advantage of that. No, that won't do. He works only under contract and does not give free consultations. Just as he was about to give that as a response, Hope's fair head popped from behind the door.
来ないの?
Are you coming? On the walk, Hope brought up the cat thing a few more times. Ethan protested absently. His thoughts went back to the letter again and again, to that question. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to find the answer. It was no longer a matter of helping an acquaintance whose name Ethan immediately forgot. No, it was Ethan himself who needed a little help with distraction and an answer. That was a weird thing to do, but Ethan waited until Hope was fast asleep. Only then did he sneak over to his laptop to write a response. Certainly he had no real answer as of yet. Threw in a few dozen polite words, general meaning of which was he had taken up the case. Then he clicked send. When Ethan returned to bed, Hope was still breathing slow and deep. He listened to her breath for a while, trying not to think that he had broken his own rule. After all, he really needed a distraction. No matter the strength of your affection, sooner or later you will want to take a break. It was another thing that he had learned over the past 4.5 years. Ethan had to point out when things started to be off. He would say it was on Saturday, that is, about a week after the first letter. But this, of course, wouldn't be accurate. Those weird things started happening almost immediately after he pressed the send button. First night, he saw a room in his dreams. A chipped white ceiling and similarly rough walls lit the fluorescent lamps. Lit with. Ethan couldn't see the lamps themselves, but he recognized the cold, shimmering light. He often used those lamps in the offices. The light filled the room to the brim. Ethan thought it was about to burst, and then the light would splash all over the room just like the juice from a squished tomato. Apart from the walls and the light, the room had a red sofa. The sofa stood just a bit aside to the center, not too large, quite faded, flooded with shimmering white light. This light made the sofa seem to be trembling a little, and the room trembled with it. Okay. Suddenly, Ethan thought it would be way better if the sofa was standing right in the middle. Then he felt something on his temple, a touch. He had to flinch, scream, stumble to the side, yet he couldn't. He was paralyzed. Only his eyes could move, and they desperately tried to reach beyond his field of vision where something was touching his temple. Ethan felt a faint flow of air as if someone was whispering in his ear. Did hear the whisper, just one word. Ethan no longer remembered what the word was, and he jumped up in his bed, gasping for air. Hope muttered something to sleep and turned to the other side. It took a long time to get back to sleep, but by morning Ethan did pass out, and when he woke up, the dream wiped out of his mind pretty quick. The task at hand it interested him much more than some muck spilling out of his subconscious. He was thinking about the task while he was chewing on the morning toast, driving to the bank, and all the way back. It was just like a Christmas present waiting for its time in the closet. The more you tell yourself you shouldn't think about it, the more you do. I'm falling asleep, guys. Falling asleep. At home, Ethan tried to stick to his plan, working on the project he was paid for, but ended up sitting over a single report for several hours. He couldn't squeeze out a letter. To hell with it. After all, he was almost done with his current project. Wouldn't be much of a problem if he presented the result a bit later on, would it? Besides, it was really time for him to get a breather. One can't be spending so much time in a world where madness, curse, and death are contagious. To hell with it, Ethan thought as he closed the files of the project he was paid for. There was plenty of information, but Ethan knew he would not get an answer right away. Accurate answers, just like the precious pearls, lay at great depths. He had to go down to the very bottom. Ethan was not afraid. He had done it many times. His counterpart might have to wait for a week or so, but Ethan knew he'll manage to crack the riddle. Oh, wow. Now what? What he didn't know is what else could be found at those great depths. And at some point in this investigation, things started happening. He started hearing sparse phrases. even though he never turned on TV or radio and Hope wasn't even at home. When he sat in front of the screen and once again trying to connect the dots in his research, he could feel someone looking at the back of his head. When he turned around, of course, there was no one in the room. Was that my screen? Was that the game? Eventually, he taught himself not to turn around. He just got angry, pushing fingers into his temples when the familiar feeling appeared again. I don't know. He started losing things. Rather, things would disappear than appear in the strangest of places. One day, he found his pencil in the freezer, stuck in a minced meat briquette. Even when the briquette melted down, he couldn't pull the whole pencil out. All Ethan got was a bloody stump. Weird. At this point, he could stop and think of it, but got distracted by the coffee maker and mindlessly shoved the stump into the trash bin. I saw another shadow. There's something wrong with the shadows, too. They became sharper, thicker, and deeper, and it was the case in the whole department. Sometimes they moved. Of course, Ethan only felt like they were moving. It couldn't have been any other way. Ethan didn't really pay attention to this, just like he did with that dream he had. All of that seemed very familiar. He was already experiencing similar things during the periods of intense work when his nervous system was exhausted by the workload. There was always a rational explanation, the stress, or those new, much more environmentally friendly light bulbs that Hope had installed all around the apartment. Besides, it's so easy to dismiss this sort of things when you're deeply invested in something, and this question really got Ethan involved. Every time he seemed to get it right, his thought went off. Like he was climbing a rock, but a safe ledge suddenly turned slippery. The next thing he knew, he's at the bottom again. Never faced anything like that during his previous research. There were times he had to spend weeks or months looking for the right answers. Those were the tricky cases, but at least he could always tell how his research was progressing. This time he was stumbling in his tracks without knowing why, and that was all he could tell. Interesting. So it's like something's forcing him to forget and start over. The week was over, but he still had nothing to send back to his contact. In his reply, Ethan asked a couple of questions. Not that he was really interested, just as to curiosity. That's how the surprisingly exciting email conversation started. With this, Ethan's contact grew to be something more, something of a friend maybe. Never asked how Ethan's work was progressing. This was a question to ask himself, and the answer was never good for him. Of course, he started sleeping back. All his sleep was easy, but he woke up many times during the night. Sometimes he goes what? Ethan could not remember his dreams. That night, he woke up about 3-4 times. At first, Ethan was lucky enough to fall asleep almost immediately after he woke up. But at some point, his eyes got open again. This time, the sleep wouldn't come. Ethan felt terribly thirsty. He found no slippers on the usual spot. No ways could wake up Hope, so he decided not to look for them and only regretted it when approaching the kitchen. The floor was bloody cold. So cold that Ethan consciously looked down. And when he was looking up again, he saw a shadow. No doubt that shadow belonged to a woman, a naked woman. But he could clearly see the points of her nipples as the shadow turned around. No wonder it's freezing cold here. That's why it's freezing cold, because there's a naked woman that moves slowly along the wall, floating in a rectangular pool filled with moonlight. She was dancing. And the humming silence in Ethan's ears was her music. But he was watching her, unable to move. He was paralyzed just like back in his dream, but he did not remember it. At that moment, he didn't remember anything at all. He couldn't think about anything at all. What is this? He felt an itch in his eyes and a momentary urge to blink. Oop. For a fraction of a second, he could only see the thick, vicious darkness, and when he opened his eyes again, there was no shadow anymore. The glowing rectangle shifted its place and now lay on the kitchen floor at Ethan's feet. You could see the cold white light flowing into the seams between the tiles on the floor. He some reason he took a deep breath and then stepped forward into the rectangle of light. Nothing happened. That was supposed to, and what was supposed to happen? What did he really see? Did he really see anything? He walked deeper into the room, much bolder, grabbed the decanter and started to drink in big, greedy sips. Water streamed down his chin and chest, hitting the tiles on the floor and poured into the grooves of the seams. No, that wasn't a delusion. The kitchen was completely empty, the floor felt warm again, and yet it wasn't a delusion. What's going on? So because he mentioned Selene to this guy, Selene's in his life now too? And all of this was begging for a rational explanation. That's why Ethan decided he should talk to Hope in the morning. Oh, God. Something changed. I think that's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to come back to this. It's an interesting story so far. I need to do some research on my Greek mythology again, apparently. So I don't remember Selene. I'm so goddamn tired. Until next time, guys. Bye.